the fire, squatted by Eric, and looked to see. They became motionless, gripped in each other's arms, 4 unwinking eyes aimed, and 2 mouths open. Far beneath them, the trees of the forest sighed, then roared. The hair on their foreheads fluttered and flames blew out sideways from the fire. 15 yards away from them came the plopping noise of fabric blown open. Neither of the boys screamed, but the grip of their arms tightened and their mouths grew peaked. For perhaps 10 seconds they crouched like that while the flailing fire sent smoke and sparks and waves of inconstant light over the top of the mountain. Then, as though they had but one terrified mind between them, they scrambled away over the rocks and fled. Ralph was dreaming. He had fallen asleep after what seemed hours of tossing and turning noisily among the dry leaves. Even the sounds of nightmare from the other shelters no longer reached him, for he was back to where he came from, feeding the ponies with sugar over the garden wall. Then someone was shaking his arm, telling him that it was time for tea.
Ralph, wake up.
What's the matter?
We saw
The beast?
flames.
We saw the beast.
The leaves were roaring still. Piggy bumped into him, and a twin grabbed him as he made for the oblong of paling stars.
You can't go out. It's horrible.
Piggy, where are the spears?
I can hear the...
Quiet. Quiet then. Lie still.
They lay there listening, at first with doubt, but then with terror to the description the twins breathed at them between bouts of extreme silence. Soon the darkness was full of claws, full of the awful unknown and menace. Ralph knelt in the entrance to the shelter and peered cautiously round him.
Sam and Eric, call them to an assembly. Quietly. Go on.
The twins, holding tremulously to each other, dared the few yards to the next shelter and spread the dreadful news. Ralph stood up and walked for the sake of dignity, though with his back pricking to the platform. Piggy and Simon followed him, and the other boys came sneaking after. Ralph took the conch from where it lay on the polished seat and held it to its lips, but then he hesitated and did not blow. The circle of boys before him bristled with hunting spears. He handed the conch to Eric, the nearest of the twins.
We've seen the beast with our own eyes. No, we weren't asleep.
Sam took off the story. By custom now, one conch stood for both twins, for their substantial unity was recognized.
It was furry. There was something moving behind its head. Wings? The beast moved too.
That was awful. It kind of set up.
The fire was bright.
That was... Oh, we just made it up.
More sticks on.
There were eyes,
Teeth.
claws,
We ran as fast as we could.
bashed into things.
The beast followed us.
I saw it seeking behind the trees.
Nearly touched me.
All right, now, Sam and Eric are giving an account of the beast they just saw. What are some inconsistencies in what they're saying?
The claws and the teeth.
Yeah, it had teeth, it chased us, it almost got us. No, it didn't. It's a dead man hanging up in a tree. All right, but you think about it. Sam and Eric were tending the fire. It's just kind of casting this light onto the mountain. They see this big shadow, and the wind is taking this dead man kind of up and then down. It is probably a scary thing. It said it had wings. No, that's the parachute. So they're just seeing this distorted view, but then they also are kind of exaggerating, saying it was chasing them through the forest. No, it wasn't. Ralph pointed fearfully at Eric's face, which was striped with scars from where the bushes had torn him.
How did you do that?
Eric felt his face. Quentin. I'm all rough. The circle of boys shrank away in horror. Johnny, yawning still, burst into noisy tears and was slapped by Bill till he choked on them. The bright morning was full of threats, and the circle began to change. It faced out rather than in, and the spears of the sharpened wood were like a fence. Jack called them back to the center.
This will be a real hunt. Who comes?
These spears are made of wood. Don't be silly.
Jack sneered at him.
Frightened?
Of course I'm frightened. Who wouldn't be?
Piggy took the conch.
Couldn't we just kind of stay here? Maybe the beast won't come near us.
But for the sense of something watching them, Ralph would have shouted at him.
Stay here and be cramped into this bit of the island, always on the lookout? How should we get our food? And what about the fire?
Let's be moving. We're wasting time.
No, we're not. What about the little ones?
Stuck to the little ones.
Someone's got to look after them.
Nobody has so far.
There was no need. Now there is. Piggy, I'll look after them.
That's right. Keep Piggy out of danger.
Have some sense. What can Piggy do with only one eye?
Piggy took off his damaged glasses and cleaned the remaining limbs.
How about us, Ralph? Suppose the beast comes when you're all away. I can't see properly, and if I get scared,
You're always scared.
I got the conch.
Conch. can't concentrate anymore. We know how. Wait, no. We know who ought to say things. What did Simon do speaking, or Bill, or Walter? It's time some people knew they've got to keep quiet and leave deciding things to the rest of us.
You haven't got the conch. Sit down.
Jack's face went so white that the freckles showed as clear, brown flecks. He licked his lips and remained standing.
This is a hunter's game. Job.
This is more than a hunter's job because you can't track the beast. And don't you want to be rescued? I said before, the fire is the main thing. Now the fire must be out.
The old exasperation saved him and gave him the energy to attack.
Hasn't anyone got any sense? We've got to relight the fire. You never thought of that, Jack, did you? Or didn't any of you want to be rescued?
Yes, they wanted to be rescued. There was no doubt about that. And with a violent swing to Ralph's side, the crisis passed.
Now think.
Ooh, child.
Now think, Jack. Is there anywhere on the island you haven't been?
There's only, but of course, you remember the tail end part, where the rocks are all piled up. I've been near there. The rocks make a sort of bridge. There's only one way up.
And the thing might live there?
All the assembly talked at once.
Quiet, all right. That's where we'll look. If the beast isn't there, we'll go up in the mountain and look, and light the fire.
After they had eaten, Ralph and the Biggins set out along the beach. Simon, walking in front of Ralph, felt a flicker of incredulity. A beast with claws that scratched, that sat on a mountaintop, that left no tracks, and yet was not fast enough to catch Sam and Eric. However, Simon thought of the beast. There arose before his inward sight the picture of a human at once heroic and sick. He sighed. Other people could stand up and speak to an assembly, apparently, without that dreadful feeling of the pressure of personality. Could say what they would as though they were speaking to only one person. He stepped aside and looked back. Ralph was coming along, holding his spear over his shoulder. Simon allowed his pace to slacken until he was walking side by side with Ralph and looking up at him through the coarse black hair that now fell to his eyes. Ralph glanced sideways, smiled constrainedly as though he had forgotten that Simon had made a fool of himself, then looked away again at nothing. For a moment or two, Simon was happy to be accepted, and then he ceased to think about himself. When he backed into a tree, Ralph looked sideways impatiently, and Robert sniggered. Simon reeled, and a white spot on his forehead turned red and trickled. Ralph dismissed Simon and returned to his personal hell. He followed Jack toward the castle where the ground rose slightly. Ralph parted the screen of grass and looked out. The rock of the cliff was split, and the top littered with great lumps that seemed to totter. Behind Ralph, the tall grass had filled with silent hunters. Ralph looked at Jack.